Evil Morty has been one of the most important and interesting characters in the series. He single-handedly saves the show whenever he appears in the episode, despite him getting what looks like to be a conclusion to his character. A lot of things about him, such as his backstory, is unknown to us, and today I want to talk about that. But before starting, if you like this kind of content, make sure to subscribe to the channel. I regularly upload content about the Rick and Morty series and plan to talk about other cartoons too. Anyway, without further ado, I hope you all have a great day, and let's get on with the video. Evil Morty made his debut in the 10th episode of the first season. Ever since his debut, he has been the most intriguing character in the whole show. A lot of us expected him to appear in an episode, and whenever he does, the hype is always at its greatest and he always steals the show. The last time when we saw him was in the final episode of the 5th season. That episode was wild. It delivered on nearly everything we have been asking for, from Rick's true origin story to the culmination of Evil Morty's grand plan. In many ways, Rick and Morty Season 5 finale is exactly what we all have been waiting for a long time. Concrete explanations for Rick's past and the nature of his universe, and a proper conclusion to the Evil Morty arc. Despite getting his conclusion, it has already been confirmed that he will return. I have already talked about when he will return and where he went to, and I recommend you check that video out. The link will be in the description. I have read the entire Rick and Morty comic in the hopes of finding something that would help me to unravel the mystery of Evil Morty. Unfortunately, I was unlucky. He was mentioned only twice. In the 42nd chapter of the original comics, Rick recalls Evil Morty alongside other famous enemies of his. Interestingly enough, I don't think enough people know that, but Rick, who is in the comics, is actually our very own Rick C-137. At first it was C-132, but in the 3rd volume of the comics he was revealed to be deceased, which switched focus to portray the off-screen adventures of the Rick Sanchez and Morty Smith of Dimension C-137. Another time when Evil Morty was mentioned was in the 5th chapter of Pocket Like You Stole It, but the latter one was nothing more than an Easter egg. A lot of people used to think that Evil Morty used to be the original Morty of Rick C-137 before he met Morty Prime. At that time, this theory was making some sense. We didn't know that Rick C-137 never had a Morty. That's why Ricks were so surprised when Morty told them that he was Morty C-137 in the first episode of the 3rd season, since they knew that Morty C-137 never existed.
Hold your fire! Hold your fire! I'm Morty C-137!
A lot of people think that before meeting Morty Prime, Rick C-137 had several Mortys as his partners, and one of them was Evil Morty. This theory is backed up by the intro of the series. The intro for the show is always changing. However, the first 12 seconds always remain the same. In that period of time, we see very interesting clips of Morty about to be eaten by large frog-like aliens. A lot of people found this suspicious since it remains the only scene that hasn't changed from the openings except the outro, but it was still later changed from time to time. When did this happen? Did Morty survive, and why did Rick allow his grandson to be eaten? A lot of people assume that the Morty that we see in the opening is Evil Morty, who somehow survived the frog-like aliens and decided to take revenge on his grandfather who let him die there. However, this scene is explained very well in the comics. In the 49th chapter of the original Rick and Morty comics, Rick and Morty crashed on some planet which somehow locked Rick in a time loop. However, given Rick's portal gun, he and Morty are able to visit anywhere in the galaxy, and Rick embraces the functional immortality and lack of consequences to learn and do as much as possible, safe in the knowledge that he'll always start that day again. It's on one of these consequence-free days that Rick and Morty seemingly experience the adventure we all see in the show's credits, with Rick escaping through a portal while a fallen Morty is approached by frog-like monsters. The moment is literally a single panel, taking place between days in which Rick tortures Jerry and goes on a bender at blips and chits, but functionally answers every question we have asked about the moment. The Morty being consumed is indeed the regular Morty, Morty Prime, but it happened during a time loop that was subsequently closed, meaning he doesn't remember the experience. Rick also knew that Morty would be reborn the next day, explaining why he allows Morty to die when he's risked his life to save him before. While we don't know exactly why Rick and Morty are in this threatening dimension, it takes place during a period when Rick is trying to cure the boredom of a potential eternity, suggesting they visited simply because Rick thought there was something to learn or experience by doing so. Nothing interesting was written in the Rick and Morty characters guide either. The only thing that is written is weird rumor about an all-powerful scheming Morty with an eye patch. Seems like a bit. And that was it. The only interesting thing that we can get from this sentence is that Evil Morty's influence was getting noticed even by the Galactic Federation, but since he was Morty and not Rick, they didn't really regard him as a threat, which we already know was a huge mistake. However, it seems the Galactic Federation wasn't the only one who was interested in him. In the 7th episode of the 3rd season, campaign manager Morty watches the event unfold on the TV from a bar. The news coverage switches back towards the highly likely victory for politician Morty and his speeches. Displaying his negative feelings of the situation, campaign manager Morty is then confronted by investigator Rick, who delivers some secret files and warns him that he should be fearful of what is to come. Who is investigator Rick? How did we know about him? Well, it is possible, but unlikely, that Evil Morty was controlling investigator Rick as he did with Evil Rick. This may have been because Evil Morty knew that if his former campaign manager learned the truth, he would try to assassinate him in front of a large crowd of supporters, which would earn him votes of sympathy. However, there is also another possibility as to how he knew about him. In the 10th episode of the 1st season, the episode where Evil Morty made his debut, we see Ricks who recognize the technology that Evil Morty was using.
My God! I've seen this technology before. This Rick was being controlled remotely, puppeteered by somebody else. This is the receiver. Yeah, but where's the transmitter?
After rewatching that episode, I was wondering what happened to those Ricks. It seems for some time the Citadel was investigated with Evil Morty, which is the reason why he was trying to blend in other Mortys. I think he went into hiding while the other Mortys were investigating and looking for cameras that caught what happened in other Ricks' homes. I bet by the time they figured out there was in fact a Morty involved, Evil Morty had long disappeared. There is also a possibility of him being active in killing the Ricks after them finding out about his doings, which would explain why the number of people working on the case got smaller. Also, in the 1st episode of the 3rd season, a lot of the Citadel was destroyed, so maybe a lot of information on the computers and the records of the crime were also destroyed, along with many investigators on the case. Evil Morty coming out after the destruction of the Citadel is an effective way of having no dirt on his hands since his crimes have been erased by the Citadel's destruction. This doesn't explain his obsession with Rick C-137. Why was Evil Morty so obsessed with him? Well, I think the reason for that is that Rick C-137 created the central finite curve, possibly with the help of the other founding members of the Citadel of Ricks. Evil Morty assumed it was made out of arrogance to cut their section of the multiverse off from all the realities where Rick wasn't the smartest man alive. Personally, I'm assuming it was done to limit the movement of Rick Prime. Hunting him down in an extremely large but finite multiverse is so much easier than a truly infinite one. And this is what makes me think that Rick Prime could somehow be responsible for Evil Morty. No, I'm not saying that Evil Morty is Rick Prime's Morty. We already know that our Morty is his true Morty. But I think after realizing that he was trapped inside an infinite curve, he tried to look for a way to escape it without drawing other Rick's attention. He knew if he tried to battle the whole Citadel, he would lose. That's why he started looking for a Morty, a perfect evil Morty who would try his max to break the cycle after hearing the truth. He most likely explained how Ricks created the central finite curve to trap themselves and Mortys into the universe, where they are the smartest ones. He would portray that story in a way that would make our and other Ricks in a bad way, and him in a good way. He and Rick C-137 seem to know a lot about each other, and maybe Rick Prime told Evil Morty all about him and how he is the one responsible for the creation of the central finite curve. After hearing that, Evil Morty started investigating other Ricks, especially Rick C-137, and started making his grand plan. Anyway, I guess this is all for today. His return is already confirmed by the creator, Dan Harmon, but when and how will he return? Well, I think there is a slight, not much, but slight chance that he may reunite with Rick C-137 against Rick Prime, after both of them realize that he is the reason why both of their lives are the way they are. Because when you think about it, that really is the case. Rick C-137's life was directly affected by him since he was the one who killed his family, and after killing his family, Rick C-137 created the Citadel, which made life hell for Evil Morty. After Evil Morty sees how much Rick cares about his family, I feel like he will consider Rick C-137 as an exception and will decide to help him to get eternal peace for himself after dealing with Rick Prime. That would be an amazing moment for both Rick and Evil Morty. Them getting help from each other would be exactly what their characters used to be against. Right now, I can't think of any other reason why they would team up. If you have any other idea on how and why Evil Morty would return in the show, let me know in the comments. What do you think about his past? How did he know the truth about the central finite curve and everything about Rick C-137? Is Rick Prime responsible for that? Let me know in the comments, like this video, and subscribe to the channel for more. Lonnie Brooks out. Bye.